Everyone. Glad to be before you again. As you know, we've been working here for quite some time, about 10 years, and we've completed 3 developments to date. As Mr. Healy mentioned, most of that development has been fairly dense, affordable rental development. We started to move the needle a little bit in the direction of doing mixed income development with the Voorhees Station project on Route 27, which is 20% market rate with some commercial. And over the last couple of years, we've been in multiple conversations with the redevelopment agency to craft a development that was going to satisfy a somewhat different set of goals than we had addressed before. Just to reiterate briefly, less density than before, building something closer to 30 units an acre rather than 50 units an acre, which is permissible in the zone. Doing more of a concentration of market rate and affordable units, and creating open space in the neighborhood and creating connections in the neighborhood. Among those connections, sidewalks throughout this neighborhood in the parcels, the 6 acres that we're working on, as well as kind of reconnecting these 2 huge kind of semi-industrial parcels back to the rest of the town. At some point in the last 50 years, they were consolidated into these 2 enormous blocks that just kind of wound up being these blighted industrial sites. So we're going to reconnect them to the entire neighborhood. You can see a little bit of the picture of what we're going to do in those renderings. And another big piece of the puzzle here was to change the unit mix as well. We only have a small percentage, about 15% of the development is going to be 3 bedrooms, with the idea that we're concentrating on 1 and 2 bedrooms, especially on the market side, to attract a diversity of people of all different household incomes to this area, with the goal of just creating a different kind of neighborhood with people of all different positions in life and incomes and ages, just to bring a different feel to the neighborhood and get a different kind of energy to the neighborhood and more people in the neighborhood on the street. I think one of the interesting things about the design too is that there are a few dozen units that look like they're multifamily units, but they're actually direct entry duplex units onto the street. So that means we'll have a lot of front doors that face the street rather than having buildings that only have a single main entrance. And I think that's a really positive thing from a land use point of view, because it means that you just have a lot more eyes in the street, people walking around, people coming in and out, people sitting on their stoops, etc. And the green space element here, I think, is kind of the key to all this, because the development really centers around that. It provides a public open space, the only public open space in this area, in this redevelopment area. And furthermore, it'll look like open space. It'll look like public space, but it'll be privately managed. That's part of the agreement that we've drawn up, is that we will manage it ourselves in perpetuity. So, the reason we're here is there are certain elements of the development that made it impossible, or I can say completely infeasible, to apply for the typical set of funding sources that we get to build these developments. The 2 main reasons for that are the smaller number of 3 bedrooms. And to back up a second, when we apply for funding to the state HMFA, it's scored on an objective point scale. And at this point, with all that's going on with COA in the state, it's extremely competitive. And winning and losing projects are separated by fractions of a point. And this may be actually a year where it would be difficult to win if you're not a perfect scoring development. We would not get points for 3-bedroom units because of our commitment to change the unit mix in this area. Therefore, we basically out of the gate would be infeasible. I'm sorry.
No.
Yes. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we had extensive conversations about how we could structure this development. One of the conversations was around whether we could come to you to seek a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes, of course. We ultimately decided not to do so because of earlier conversations about the town not wanting to consider a pilot for the next phase of the development. that pilot would have represented a great source of support for the development from a financial point of view and a predictability point of view, but we decided not to do that. We had extensive conversations with Mr. Healy's office about that possibility, and that was really over the course of the last 6 months or so, but ultimately came to a conclusion that it just didn't make sense in general to seek that kind of support from the town. So that's part of the reason why we got kind of to a point of looking to seek these trust funds at a later stage than we would have liked to, because we were really trying to look at a number of different tools that could be used, and ultimately put in a request for the trust funds alone. Just to give you a little background on the trust funds themselves and why they're needed, we are applying to a different funding source, a reserve called the Mixed Income Reserve, just reserved for developments like this that are a combination of market and affordable units. And there's only one project in a city and one in a suburb that's awarded funding under this reserve per year. So it's highly competitive. It's not scored on a traditional basis. It's scored only on the basis of what's called a tiebreaker, which is the amount of funding per bedroom that you're requesting. So effectively, it's a way for the state to incentivize supporting developments that towns themselves are supporting and that other funding sources are coming in to support. In other words, developments that are asking for the least amount of state funding that they can in order to make themselves feasible. So the more funding that we have from non-state sources, the better our tiebreaker, and the basis for deciding who wins and loses is the tiebreaker figure itself. So that's why we initially requested what we thought was justifiable under the affordability assistance and trust fund rules of the $900,000 figure, because that would have produced a better tiebreaker. We understand that the town cannot support that kind of request, and in conversation with Mr. Healy's office, we scaled it back to $500,000, which is still helpful. It's just not as helpful it would have been as the $900,000 would have been in making the development competitive. But it'll still help as we go head to head with other developments that do have support from the towns where they're located. So I think that's kind of the big picture. I'm glad to answer other questions if folks have them.
Is there anything you could have done to make your request more timely in advance? There seems to be concern here that it's at the 11th hour.
Like I said, I mean, this was the product of some time negotiating of how we could craft a development that would be competitive using the tools that we have at our disposal, including those the town has at its disposal. We don't like being in a position of asking for something at the 11th hour. We have no incentive to do that at all. Case in point here, because nobody likes it, yourselves being the first. But we had a long series of conversations about how we could craft this project to be competitive, and I think the approach that we settled on was this one, but it came out of a long series of conversations that took some time.
And did you initiate those conversations?
I don't know. I mean, how long would we be talking about? I don't want to go too much into the complicated number of variables that we were talking about. But
it's tough to say exactly when I mean, the overall issue's been
A week, a month, 6 months?
I would say that the actual request, that was probably started to, probably 3-4 months was when we really started to talk about the request, and then it kind of coalesced to some degree in the discussion before the Land Use Committee in April, and then Councilman Prasad summarized the discussion there. Then we were brought back to Land Use on Wednesday. At the committee level, that's kind of seems to be how the process is, and then now it's before you.
And I'd further comment that the project plans have been to the planning board, and the planning board has approved them. And also, of course, this was discussed with the redevelopment agency, I don't know how far back, because they had to be involved in the acquisition of the land. So the project has certainly been going on for quite a long time.
I've known about the land, I've known about the project, I love the design. It was just this request for money.
Well, that's what, this kind of thing is what we have that fund for. And there are other projects, we had a commitment of $800,000 to the Penrose proposal, one which has never surfaced, I've never gone forward with it, but we've had substantial commitments of this nature in the past.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
I'd like to just make a comment, if I can. So, RPM has been a prominent redeveloper in our redevelopment area, and they've been partners with the township for quite some time. And being a part of the redevelopment agency for over a decade myself, I know that we've had, and Mark, you can attest to this, we've had extensive conversations with them about this concept, about the design, about projects moving forward, and they've been pretty much working very well with the redevelopment agency to make that area revitalized. And they've also, I've been involved with them regarding some of the youth projects and some of the partnering they've been doing with us over at the senior center over at 25 Parkside, letting some of the youth groups use the community room and the things that they've been doing to work with the community over there, with the senior citizens. And so I think they've been great stewards, and I think they've been great partners, and that area is in need of redevelopment, and I believe that although the timing is not the most ideal situation that we have going forward here, but I think that we need to move this project forward, and considering all the investment that they've done in that area, I just wanted to speak and say that, you know, I certainly appreciate being on the redevelopment agency, all the work that you've done to partner with Franklin Township. And not to mention the award-winning project that was done over, is it Voorhees? Was that the one? Voorhees was, which one was the one that they won the award?
Berry Street, I
Was it
believe
Berry
it was.
Street?
I think
RPM,
each
both of
have-
them.
And Parkside as well.
Parkside, I would say, I think
All of their projects have
everything's
been-
won an award of some sort or another.
Yeah.
At least that's what I always see when I go to Atlantic City
Yeah.
for the municipalities and talk to Brendan there. I believe that each
Right.
of our projects has been given awards by the state.
Thank you. So they put us on the map. And I apologize, I'm speaking kind of strange here, but I have very bad allergies. I'm so congested, I'm like in pain. But anyway, just wanted to say thank you, and if you can do better the next time in terms of timing, by all means, try to do so. Thank you.
It is a record-breaking allergy here. Councilman Murray.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to echo former mayor and councilman at large, Ms. Francois. I would like to echo those statements because I'm also on the redevelopment agency, and Mr. McBride has always come with some interesting projects, and we've always accepted them in that with a little bit of change here and there as to what we need and want. They definitely have been good stewards, and I would like to see them continue.
Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I just have two quick questions for Brendan.
Of course.
Brendan, the first question is, and I may be asking you to state the obvious here, but what will happen if you don't receive the funding from the state
We'll try again.
next year?
Well, hopefully. Assuming that the funding guidelines are the same, which is not a small assumption given the fact that we're going to have a change in gubernatorial administration. We would go back for funding next year and hopefully be able to figure out another way to get it done.
Figure another way to skin the cat.
Yep.
Got it. All right, so question number two is, what is the deadline for you to file?
Oh, it's imminent. It's tomorrow.
Very good, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, we thought we had a bit of breathing room, and I think the last meeting was canceled.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I noticed the woman with the allergies carrying a flower.
I don't know where this came from, honestly.
Oh,
It was left over from yesterday.
Memorial Day Welcome, Ms. Robinson. I hope your meeting with the Congresswoman went well. And Mr. Prasad, you had a motion.
Yeah, I make the motion that we pass resolution 210.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, it seems like we should call a roll on this one.